Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Herald Sun's live coverage of the 2020 AFL Grand Final pre-match show. We've got about 2.5 hours until the first bounce at the Gabba. I'm Mel Payton, joined by Robbo and Robbo, two doyens of the game. We're going to talk all things Grand Final and footy for the next half hour or so. If you've got a question, there's a live chat box just under this video window, so drop it in there and we'll try and get through as many of those as we can. But I'm not sure which Robbo to throw to first. Mark Robinson, this is a unique grand final. You're covering it from where are you? You normally would be in the MCG press box about now, probably just about going down to the room. So how are you finding the first night grand final and the first Gabba grand final?
Well, it's a long way. Yesterday was a long day. Today's been not as long. We've been doing some work at Fox Footy. Been looking at the Herald Sun website, reading a lot of the copy in our big 24-page wraparound today. There was some fantastic copy in there. And now I'm starting to get a little bit buzzy, to be honest. We're a couple of hours away. I'm just got Fox Footy on at the moment. It's raining in Brisbane. Mitch, you're there. How heavy is it raining?
It was actually bucketing down before. I've got a little creek at the back of my house. I was overflowing. There's like a massive showers up here. So it's not raining right now, but the skies are getting pretty dark.
Tell me,
what does that mean?
Does the Gabba drain well?
Well, when it came down like that, it usually does. But I saw photos of the centre ground that had the mat over it, and there was a little bit wetter in the corners of there, so it looked like a little bit floody. But I'm pretty sure it'll drain out by the time the game gets underway.
Have you played at the Gabba before, where they've covered the pitch area? And when the pitch comes off, they're going to be pretty soggy in the outfield, yet the midfield or the centre wicket area is going to be quite hard. I suspect that'll be pretty difficult for the players.
It was pretty hard for the ruckman, especially in the players around the ball, when it's usually really, really hard there. So the ruckman kind of judged the ball to go pretty high. It bounces pretty big at the Gabba. So I dare say they'll be throwing it up early. I probably haven't really seen a grand final when they don't bounce the ball the first one, so that'll be pretty interesting to watch. But around the centre square, it's going to be very, very muddy, I guess, if it continues to rain like that. Any
questions, Al?
Yeah, there's a few, and they're pretty much all about the weather, whether which team it's going to benefit. And someone's asked Robbo ×2. Would you make any changes to the lineups that have been named for today? Both teams going in unchanged. Pretty much, they've only both got one ruckman, I think. So would you be pulling any late moves, Mitch? Do you reckon?
No, I don't think you'd see that happening. They've got a pretty set team for the past few games in the finals. I don't think they'd want to change that depending on the weather. I think they're all pretty capable to play wet with the footy. We know that they've played a couple of games in the wet against Port Adelaide. Geelong played against Port Adelaide in the wet, and so did Richmond earlier on. So I don't see them changing teams, no.
It's been a really big discussion point about who does this favour. I think it comes down to mindset, Mitch, and join in anytime you like here. It comes down to mindset. We know that Richmond like to surge the football forward, but in the air along the ground. So a lot of the former players and coaches talking on the game, so it won't affect Richmond too much. The effect will be on Geelong, as they like to control the ball coming out of the back half, like to spot up the 20, 25 metre, 45 degree kick. Do you think, Mitch, that Geelong has to change their game plan majorly, or they just have to make minor adjustments?
They might have to change it a fair bit, considering they're the chip mark team. So they push a winger back, usually a bit slow to get back and get that spare defender, and then play that kick mark game, try and go through the middle of the ground. So I dare say it's going to be a territory battle. The coaches are going to be talking about, look, it's first team to adapt the quickest, get the ball going forward and try and get a stoppage game in their forward line. We know Geelong are massive on stoppages. They kind of live for those, whereas Richmond tend to want to keep the ball going fast and chaos ball going forward. So I dare say that the weather would probably suit Richmond, would probably tip Richmond with the worst weather. But we also know that they've got a lot of grunt in the midfield with Dangerfield and Selwood, who can get that ball going forward for them. So yeah, it's going to be a little bit of adjustment for them. I know that they'll probably adapt as well. So they're not going to, it's not their first rodeo. They know how to play wet weather footy.
I think you made a great point there with Dangerfield. You bring up his name. All final series, where's Dangerfield going to play? Is it going to be forward? Is it going to be back? We've seen him be quite devastating forward. But in these conditions, I wonder if, Mitch, the Cats will need his animalistic approach to the ball. I wonder if they'll need that around the contest. What's your thoughts?
100%. I'd start him on ball. You'd want your big bodies around the contest off the bat. I'd have him, Selwood, and potentially a faster player on the third midfield there. So I'd have him starting on the ball, get his hands on it. To grand final, I haven't played him on, but I understand that you want to get the touches and get the nerves going. So I'm sure that he will set the standard if he was on ball and you get it going forward. Then with the footy, you can come behind the ball and hold it in there, so he can still play forward and win the balls in that territory and do his damage that he does there.
So you're expecting Dangerfield to start in the centre square first bounce?
100%. If I'm wrong, that's not my fault. But if I was a coach, I'd definitely put him on ball. I'd be pretty nervous lining up against Selwood and Dangerfield in there with their grunts and their bigger bodies.
Does Guthrie go to Dusty? If Dusty starts in the middle, I think it will be Guthrie who will be minding Dustin through the middle of the ground. Do you think they're going to hand over when he goes forward? Yeah,
with Dusty, it's because it's going to be such a wet weather game. You can kind of impact him more if you're just putting a little bit more attention into him. But in saying that, it's just going to be quick kicks out of the stoppages regardless. Not going to muck around with the handballs, and he does his little 1-2 and gets his damage from that way. So I'd have Guthrie starting on him, but not going with him around the ground. Obviously, Dusty will try and lose a player and go forward and does his damage up there. But I don't think they're going to put a full tag on him. It'll just be knowing where he is at all times.
I want to use your expertise here because you play a wing, which is a very unique position. I've been pushing for the wingman to be included in the All-Australian team. When Dusty, say, is forward and he rolls up into the contest, how much of the danger is that for the opposition? What happens to the defender? What happens to the wingman in that sort of situation?
Yeah, so if a backman was playing on Dusty and he comes into the stoppage as that fifth player, the defender usually push the winger through to pick him up, or if they've pre-planned this, he'll go right through with him to even up the contest. Richmond and Geelong especially bring a lot of numbers up to the contest to try and relieve those plays. Lambert's a big one. He gets up there really high. And we also see their wingers in Marlon Pickett and McIntosh, who likes to sit out really wide, who'll drag the other players away from that situation. So if they pre-plan this, they'll go with Dusty. The backman will go with him into the contest and try and hold him up the ground. If not, they'll just push the winger through to pick him up and even up the contest.
Your great mate Eddie Betts last night, Mitch, on AFL 360 was trying to explain as a forward playing on, for example, Basher Hurley. Mm-hmm. They try and lose the small forward in the traffic. So, Basher might roll up a little bit and the wingmen go back and cover, say, Eddie in that situation. Yeah. Can you sort of explain how Richmond go that? Usually they use Lambert. Lambert's the guy who goes up the contest and that's from the forward line. From the back line, Eddie sort of loses his opponent when they go off to be, say, a supporting player of the contest. Then he goes, oh, beauty, I've got a little bit of space here. But then their wingman rolls back and covers Eddie. Is that how it plays out?
Yeah, it does. We understand that players like Eddie Betts and Kane Lambert and those players will go up towards a stoppage and try and lose their defender through there. So we know that all they got to do is just yell at the player. So say if it was Lambert coming up, they'll let the winger know, and we'll literally just pick him up straight away and let the defender take our position. So that's what I was talking about with Dusty Martin. If he tries to get up to the contest, someone will pick him up regardless. They just won't let him go free. Because that's how these players get into the stoppage and then get out and try and lose people in traffic. So it's usually one of those big hits as well. They will go towards the boundary, and that's when you'll see the player try and shoot through there and get that ball. So Dusty's really good at that. He makes a career out of it. So those players will understand that that's going to happen, and I'm sure they've done their homework and they'll realise who's going to be up there doing that damage.
Back to you, Al.
Well, I was just thinking with a question to asking about wingmen and how the different teams play. I know, Robbo, Mark is a position that you're a big advocate for every year when we talk about all Australians, that they don't get the recognition they deserve. So, Mitchell, you probably agree with that. But you mentioned there a couple of the Richmond guys, McIntosh and Marlon Pickett, and how they play, and it's sort of a bit more of a defensive kind of role. You've played against both these sides in the last few weeks. How are they different in terms of the Cats wingers, Menegola, Mitch Duncan, Blitzarves gets up there a bit? Are they, how do you see that matchup playing out?
Yeah, so if it was a dry day, the Richmond wingers are really big on holding their width and trying to drag players out of the corridor where the middies can get through. So we see that game. I've kind of found that out firsthand when you played them in the middle of the year, that they'll literally sit in the grandstand. That's how far they'll try and drag you out from the corridor. So like players like McIntosh, he's one of the best runners in the competition. He'll go up and down the ground and try and get back to help their defence, and then he'll run his buttocks off to get down the other end to try and hit the scoreboard. So it's similar to what I was saying before with the Geelong wingers. Like Tui will go forward and try and kick goals on you. He's pretty good with ball in hand. And I was talking about Blissards before, who will start on the wing and then he'll push around as a seventh defender, and then a half forward or the men in goal will come to the wing, and that's where they get their spare to try and get their ball movement going. So a lot of teams do it differently, but yeah, you see a lot of different players on the wing. It's a different position, but you just got to try and get back hard and then work your opponent the other way.
And we're getting questions too about Tommy Lynch, obviously a bit of a lightning rod this year at the Tigers, and I'm not sure how you think the wet weather will affect maybe the two Toms, Tom Lynch and Tom Hawkins, obviously down the other end. What sort of role do you think they'll play today, and how are your feelings about Tommy Lynch? There was a bit of publicity a few weeks ago for your thoughts about the big man. Has that changed at all?
Yeah, those boys are going to be pretty important today. You kind of figure out how important Tom Lynch is without me. Everyone probably thinks I'm sucking up now, but he's coming back in that team and really changed their forward line and the way they have the ball going inside 50. He's been super huge for them in the last 3 games to get him into the grand final. So credit where credit's due. He's really stood up under a lot of pressure and delivered he's going to deliver on the big stage. But in Hawkins' case, when he played against Port Adelaide, he had a lot of shots at goal, obviously, in the wet. So I don't see that being too much of a disadvantage for him today. He's going to be one of the biggest players up there. So if they're not too Tom and Hawk central, I'm sure they've got a lot of smaller players who can crumb that. If you just got to bring it to ground and crumb that and get some little snaps on goal there. But it's going to be pretty exciting to see both forward lines, see how they go today.
Tommy's such an interesting key forward. He takes a lot of marks on his chest. So being it wet today, Tommy's able to, because of his size and power, and strength, he's able to manoeuvre his defender out of the way, and he takes a lot of marks on his chest in dry weather games of football. So I suspect that Tommy will try and do that again with Tommy Lynch. Tommy Lynch will charge out and compete. Now, I don't know, it's going to be harder for the key forwards to take a lot of overhead marks, and they're going to have a lot of pressure on them, defensive pressure at the time. So I think Tommy Lynch and Jack Revolt today, they will be contesting, and that's where the famed Richmond Smalls will come into play. They're going to have to put so much pressure, on the Cats' defence and just swarm all over them. And on the flip side, the only concern I've got for Geelong, I don't know if their Smalls in the forward line put the same level of pressure, Mitch, like the Richmond Smalls do. I mean, Brian Myers, Gary Ablett, Simpson, they're fine players. I don't know. They're gonna need to put a lot of defensive pressure on Baker, Short, who floats, in the last couple of weeks, wing to halfback, Basher Hooley. They're gonna have to put a lot of pressure on those players.
Yeah, as I said before, it's about getting to as many contests as you can for the big guys and who can crumb and get those forward line stoppages. We know if you can't get a score, the best thing for Geelong forward line is getting a stoppage, and we found that out firsthand last week, that they got even the likes of Gary Ablett, who's looking really dangerous around goals. You've got Dangerfield, who's crashing through packs, trying to lose their players through the stoppages. So their pressure is what they get from stoppages. It's not so much tackles and holding the ball free kicks. It's what they do when it's in their forward line, manoeuvring through stoppages. And Hawkins himself, if he's not getting his hands on the ball with marks and handballs and kicks, he will go into the ruck and manoeuvre himself around there, because he's one of the thickest human beings you'll ever meet. You can't, we've got some great ruckmen, Oscar McInerney and Steph Martin, who is very, very big as well and muscly, and Hawkins can kind of get rid of you with ease. So you got to watch out for those. He'll get his hands on him in that regards. But yeah, they've got a lot of nifty players, Geelong, that's for sure.
What are your thoughts on Gary Ablett? Will he get his fairy tale, you reckon, Mitch?
Yeah, we heard a lot of that coming in the prelim, and you can kind of tell that they're playing for something else. It felt like out there, they were they're energetic. They came out from the very start. They threw the first punch for sure, and they were playing for something else. It felt like, and Gary Ablett's been huge for that club, and it is a fairy tale finish for him. But I dare say that he's going to have one of his best games today. I'd say.
What are your memories of?
Sorry, keep going on.
I was just going to ask Mitch what your memories are of playing. Have you played on Gazza? You would have been going back.
Yep, I've tagged him a few times. Yeah, I tagged him when he was at the Gold Coast a few times. That's when he was in his Brownlow form and stuff. There was, I think he pulled his shoulder out in one of the games on me, and he wasn't too happy. We went back and forth in a game one time, and things got a bit heated. And he's that nice a bloke. He sent me a text after the game. I don't know how he got my number, and said, "Look, what happened on the field stays on the field." And that's something that I'll always remember about Ablett. He's a massive competitor, but off the field, he's one of the nicest guys going around.
What was he doing or saying to you on the field, Gav?
I've told you this before. What happens on the field stays on the field, Robbo. But no, it was just we're getting into each other. And we both crossed the line a little bit, and we both just had a message after the game. So I'll respect that from him, that's for sure.
Yeah, that is a nice gesture. Is he lippy on the field, Gaz, or is he just?
He's allowed to be. With a bloke like me tagging him, he's allowed to say as much as he wants. He's got Brownlows, premierships, but he lets his footy do the talking early days. If you get on top of him, then he'll remind you how good he is.
Who else out there today is in the likes to get into the sledging side of things? From the Cats and Tigers. Yeah,
from the Tigers, I'd say obviously like Lynch and I go back and forth a fair bit on the field, but they don't say much until they're a physical team, Richmond. They don't say too much, but Koch and those guys will get into you, and they're pretty physical. Like after the ball leaves the area, they'll hit and bump and hold you down on the ground. So they've got that physical game about them that I actually really like and respect. That's just the way they play footy, and it's winning them games, and it kind of gets you involved in it in one way or another. If you're not getting kicks, marks, or handballs, if you getting those big tackles, laying on them on the ground, and with players like Dangerfield, they're going to try and get under their skins. I'm sure they're going to do all that kind of stuff, and they've been in the big dance, two of the last three. So this is there's not new scenarios for them.
Joel Selwood's the one. I don't go over spilt milk with you, Mitch, but Joel Selwood, the captain of Geelong, he's in for physical intimidation, and he's highly respected for his performances over, I think it's his 14th season now. He hasn't changed the way he's played from his first game into his 200th game today as captain. But he's also into the mental intimidation. He's a ferocious competitor with the body and the mouth.
Yeah, well, I saw a stat the other day. I think Geelong's got one of the oldest grand final teams in history, which
the oldest, Mitch. The oldest.
Yeah, so they got the oldest team. So they're there for a reason. They got a very experienced team. So it's not their first finals campaign, and I know they've lost a lot of prelims, so they're in this grand final to make amends to that, I'm sure. But no, they all do like to have a word on field for sure. Hawkins can get into, and as you said, Sel was very strong mentally, and he'll have his say as well. So I'm actually very excited for this game. It's obviously pretty hard to sit here and talk about how good it'll be to be in the grand final, but I'll be watching with a close eye for sure.
How gut-wrenching was it last week?
It was probably the hardest moment after the game that I've experienced in my career. I've played in a lot of semi-finals when I was at the Blues, and obviously missing the final last year against UBS with a hamstring. That was pretty sour, but yeah, I thought this year could have been our year. Geelong just obviously wanted it more than night, and they came to play. And we got off to a slow start, and we couldn't capitalise on our forward momentum when we had that there in the second quarter. But they're looking like they're probably the favourites, I would say. But yeah, it was a very hard moment last couple of weeks. Even just after the game, didn't really sink in until about midweek this week that we're not going to be playing, especially today. Sitting on the couch watching the games will be pretty tough.
So what was it like in the rooms? Was it deathly quiet?
Everyone was just sitting down, kind of just thinking about what went wrong. We had a great game against Richmond, and we just didn't bring that same mentality and ferocity that we did in that game. So it was, we sat down for about an hour, and then we had a beer with everyone and talked about the game with Fags, and we just talked about how far we've come in the past 4 years, and we'll learn from this. We learned from our games last year, and we put a lot in place to give ourselves every opportunity this year, but this didn't happen. So everyone was a bit sad, obviously, but we don't really lose. We kind of learn from those things, if you know what I mean. So yeah, it was a bit sad in the rooms, but that's footy.
Fagan's got a very, very familiar line. I'm sure you heard of it. He said to me during the week, there was a game of football and I wrote that it was a big game and excuse me, and Brisbane failed. And Fags, who I get on with really, really well, sent me a text. He says, "At Brisbane, mate, we don't fail. We either win or we learn."
Yeah, he says that even in the dark couple of years he was here when we're only winning 5 games a year, he would find something positive out of those big losses, which I didn't think he could, but we always rocked up to the meetings with something to learn and something to go away with, because we understand where we're at as a club. We've still got, I think, probably a second youngest list in the league. So we've got a lot of those blokes. I think we had 5 players that only played a pre-elim in our team last week. So we're all learned from that. And we knew last year a lot of our younger blokes will learn from those 2 finals losses as well. So we can't cry about it. We kind of just have to, get back on the horse and learn from, what happened in that game. And I'm sure next year, if we get back to a similar situation, we'll hopefully go another step further. But Fags is probably one of the best, and Danny Daly and other coaches, about finding positives in things that are, or definitely learning experiences as well. So they're very good at that.
Al?
Yeah, we've got a question asking Mitch, will you be going down to the Gabba to actually watch the game, or is it going to be a bit too hard?
It'd probably be a bit too hard. I might try and sneak in with my swipe and go up the race and have a look if we're allowed to. But no, I won't be going to the game. I know a couple of players are, but it would probably be a bit too hard for me to sit there and watch 2 teams that we played in the finals that, I thought we could have got to this day and be playing there. So I'll watch on TV. I'm jumping back on you guys at halftime, so I'm going to watch it closely. And then it's going to be pretty interesting. So I won't be going to the Gabba, just sitting at home with my family.
Righto, Mitch. Take it. Just pretend you're playing both teams today. What would Brisbane, what would Fags and the coaching panel be addressing you about? This is what we've got to take away from Richmond. This is what we've got to do to beat Richmond today. So give us some insight into, we're sitting here watching the game, what can we look out for?
Yeah, okay. So if I was Geelong, you'd want to try and get the ball away from their bubble. They're so good at their handballs and kick forwards. You just want to kind of spread. Obviously, at Brisbane, we think we've got some pretty good outside players, and we think that surging the footing, putting their backs would be under pressure would be the best thing for us. So that's why I think you put your big boys around the ball and try and get it going forward and putting their backs under pressure. That's what I'll be looking for. But if I was Richmond, I'd be probably trying to do the same thing. It's not rocket science today, especially grand finals. It's all about contested footy and clearances, and that's what they'll both be trying to do right from the get-go. So you can't do too much today, especially if it's starting to rain a little bit again outside. I think it's just going to be a lot of knock-ons. Richmond are really good at soccering off the ground, getting knock-ons and those kind of things. So even when they go long down the line, you'll see their players like Jack Rewald and that trying to hit the ball on behind back of his head. You won't try and go for those marks. So those blokes were doing a lot of knock-ons, and it's just hard to defend. So that's what they'll be doing.
Is that would either team attack any area that they think the opposition might be a little bit sus on? What would Geelong think they could get Richmond?
That's where they would. Geelong are experts at chip marks and switching the ball, and they go for those little short 45s that you don't think they'll take. But that's what I'm saying. In today's weather, they'll be probably changing the game plan a little bit. But Richmond, it's honestly just going to be contested footy. That's what Geelong smashed us in the first quarter a couple of weeks ago, and that's where they got us. And if you just don't get your hands on the ball, then you're just not going to be in the contest. So if I was Richmond, I'd be saying we just got to knock on, get the ball going forward, and put that pressure on the forward line. That's pretty much simple as it's going to be today. There's no. I don't think it's going to be massive structural things. It'll just be getting that ball going. They're going to bring a lot of numbers up around the contest. I know that for a fact.
Right, so they're going to get it. They're going to kick it along into the forward line. Now Richmond have got Jack and Tom Lynch. Geelong have got Tom Hawkins, but what they've been doing recently, or for several weeks now, is starting Stanley in the ruck. He spits forward. Blixarps goes in the ruck around the ground. Simpson might come up and play on a wing position. Do you think they will need Stanley to be a target forward for just that get out long kick?
I think if they're losing a lot of ground, they'll use that Blixarps as a defender, extra defender. They'll send him into the wing to start on the wing, and then Blixarps will just go back and play as a 7th defender. If they're not getting their hands on the ball, obviously at the start, then they'll try and start using those long out options. So he'll spit back as a defender, then he'll push back up to the wing and push another player forward. So I know that they did that against us, and as a winger, we scouted that, and we had to go back to even up the contest. We wanted 7 ahead of the ball, so we weren't going to let them get that spare that way. So with Blitzstars and Stanley, I think Stanley will be that long. Hey?
Stanley Ruxmore.
I think Stanley will ruck more, yeah, Stanley rucks majority surely. But yeah, he's a good because it's so wet. It's hard to get a perfect tap. So it's just going to be a contest, and like they'll do a lot of forward hits, forward or you're on your bum on your defensive hip. And they'll just try and run through there the whole time.
Al?
Yeah, we've got a question, sort of a bit more general about the year, which is there any kind of asterisk on this grand final? Mitch, I'm sure you would have said no if you were playing in it.
No, we from the get-go, we said this would be the toughest year. I was writing something for you guys before about, a lot of experts are saying that it was probably an asterisk type year. It's been one of the most bizarre years in football history, but I always said that at the start of the year, we just wanted to get all those protocols down correct. We wanted to go overboard with what we can and can't do, and we knew that at the very end of the year, it's probably going to be the healthiest list. We'll get probably be the best best for the finals, I think. So we focused heavily on making sure that we're always going to be healthy. I know you can't do a lot of things with that, but managing the body. Selwood was out for a few weeks with a few niggles here and there, and it's pretty much who's got the healthiest list. And both these two teams that have their best teams on the park.
I would have thought most experts, as you call people in the media, and the former footballers and coaches, I would have thought that they weren't putting an asterisk on this season whatsoever. We had spoken to so many people at club level. The players were brilliant. They made themselves available. Remember the shutdown period? The players made themselves available for so many media, for the Herald Sun, for Fox, for Seven, for all the media. We got great insight into what the players were prepared to do, gave up their money to play the game. And I think it became aware pretty quickly, Mitch, that this is not an asterisk year. Far from it. Absolutely far from it. This is not an asterisk premiership.
It's probably the toughest mentally a team could go through this year in terms of what we could and can do. So obviously a lot of teams were stuck in a hub for 100+ days, which is crazy for, to think about that ever be a thing. We did a 3-week stint in Sydney, and that was tough as it is. And these blokes have been up here for a long time. So mentally, it's probably been the toughest year on players and coaching staff and families alike. So we knew as a club at the very start, we said, look, people might think that this is going to be a write-off year. Whatever happens. You can't change if the season gets cancelled midway through or COVID breaks out again and it goes even worse than before. We just wanted to make sure that we're winning a game. If we're going to play, 4 games in 13 days or whatever we're doing, we're going to make sure that we're trying to win as many as we could. So I know on the club level, everyone thought that this would be the year that would be, going down in history to win the grand final if you can make out. So no, we didn't think it would be an asterisk. I don't think any of the players or, coaches or clubland would think that as well. So we knew that this was a very something to be proud of to make, the finals and try and make the granny.
Where do you sit and where do the Players Association sit, Mitch, on the current discussions about next year's TPP, which is the total player payment? One calls it the salary cap.
Yeah.
The AFL, there's a lot of chat about they're going to lose $1 billion, and it looks like they're only going to lose $1 million this year, and the clubs were thinking we're going to lose $10 million and we're going to be stuffed, but it might only be in the $1 to $2 million range. Make an argument for the players not to lose a lot of money when they settle on the TPP.
Well, it all starts with I'm on the AFL Players Association. I'm a delegate for them, so I've sat through a lot of meetings, but it's always been about how can we help the game. Even from the start, I know there was a lot of backlash about players that wanted to take a massive pay cut, but we've seen what worst case scenario, what could happen, and where we can make money up again down the track. So I know I can't touch on too much stuff what happens in those meetings, but it's always been pretty straightforward in terms of we wanted to get the game back on track straight away. We didn't want to have to wait around. If it was healthy to play, we said if it's always safe to play, we'll play no matter what. But in terms of player cuts, like there's a lot of other people doing it worse, and coaches being let go, and families striking a little bit here and there. So we're fortunate enough that we can still continue to do our job, and we know there's going to be probably tough arguments going back and forth with the AFL and the AFLPA, but I'm sure that they're going to get the best result. And it's actually been probably pretty positive in terms of the conversations we've had with both Gil and Marshy, what we have with the AFLPA. So it's all best interest in heart, and I'm sure they'll get it done in due course. But it's going to be maybe a little bit different to what we think next year.
I think
in terms of what we're going to be playing more games potentially next year. So that's what. If we can make up the money for the AFL in that regards, the players are, we just want to help out where we can.
How many more games do you think?
Oh, well, I heard along the lines of 25 to 27 games in a normal season and all that kind of stuff, but it doesn't get ticked off until the AFL are happy with it and the players are happy with it, and the clubs can figure out what will be happening. We don't know if there's going to be another hub situation next year or if COVID's doing what it's doing this year. So it's all we kind of find out. When the governments find out. So that's when they let us know.
How taxing was it on your body this year with the, some of the 4-day turnarounds? That might not happen next year. They might have a festival of football again where they might have 3 weeks or 3.5 weeks of footy every night. So really the discussion about, it's going to be a squad mentality, which has been a term that's been used.
Definitely is, yeah.
This year. So if you go to 27 games, how does that affect? How old are you now, Mitch?
I'm 31. I don't look at over 21 last year.
Oh, you look about 25, mate. How does that affect a 31-year-old body?
It's actually not too bad because I never in my wildest dreams thought I'd be doing 4-day turnarounds in games. I think we had 4-day breaks between 3 games. So it was crazy to think, but I've always backed our medical team and our physios and our head of football science, like the PPT people, they're all over it. So you do less training, but as soon as you finish the game, we're literally training the next day. So that your body doesn't get a chance to feel like crap. You kind of just get going again. But with the older boys, I've already spoken at our exit reviews. We'll talk about what's potentially going to happen next year. And because we get back in January 6th for training, I think we start, actual pracky matches like the JLT or whatever it is 6 weeks in. So it's going to be a whole different ball game, and they're going to be trusting us in the off season to get our programs done like we did during the COVID break for 10 weeks. We came back in great nick, and it's going to be pretty interesting because we're doing like interclubs within 4 or 5 weeks for preseason. So we've had to adapt under many circumstances this year, and I think AFL players would never have thought they'd be doing 4-day turnarounds, but I think it was pretty good. We didn't see too many soft tissues injuries this year across the league. And, they did rest players, and we weren't getting told that, if you're feeling sore, you don't have to play a type thing because it's too much of a risk. But no, the clubs are really good this year with that.
Al?
Yeah, it's changing the subject, but it is talking a bit about how things might look next year for you, Mitch. Question from Jonathan. G'day, Robbos. Love your work, but have a Lions-related question. How excited are you about the possibility of Joe Danaher joining the team and his potential impact on Brisbane's makeup?
Yeah, I saw that he nominated Brisbane. I didn't want to touch on it till I think he publicly came out and said something. So I know that he would be a fantastic addition to the team, and we've got Eric Hitwood, Dan McStay, Oscar McInerney goes down there and plays forward when he's resting from the ruck. But Joe Danaher, when he's up and running, we saw in the couple of games he played this year that he's one of the best forwards in the competition, and I've got 100% faith in our medical team to get him up and going because, we've done that with the likes of Hodgie, Birchall, those players who come up here who have, injuries during later in their career. And I'd see him come up here making an instant impact to our team. And it'd be pretty dangerous to see him with Hitwood up there, leading out a few of our kicks. So if we can get him up here, that'd be great. If not, we've got players who can play that role as well. But it'd be a fantastic addition to our team, that's for sure.
And you're chasing the guy at Cocker too, to be a big change because I don't know if you can go McStay, Danaher and Hitwood up forward. McStay's just a tremendous mark of the ball, and he was defending for you guys. But Leicester came in and did a pretty good job. You got Harris Andrews, who's I think's the best, or if not the best, but one of the best key defenders in the competition. And you got Gardner, who you missed in that final game. Who really is the the general all-round stopper. So
Yeah.
you're going to have a lot of choices in the defensive department.
Yeah, we brought Birchall up here to play that kind of general with the ball. We know how good his left foot is. We've also got Alex Withen, who's kind of sitting there as well, who probably missed some opportunity this year with Calamachi, who came up here and we turned him into a halfback runner with a bit of speed. So with the likes of Gardner, Harris Andrews, as you mentioned, Lester's probably had his best year in his career this year, which I didn't see that he could take his game to another level because he's already playing so well. So for him to do that this year was amazing to see. Obviously, we missed Gardner in that final. He's Hodges really rubbed off on those blokes. Kind of gave them a chop out when he got up here to let them sit back and learn that role. And when Hodge retired, they kind of fulfilled what he was trying to teach them. So those guys are really, really experienced down there now. They've got a lot of continuity in their game and they've built a lot of synergy over the past 2 years. So as I said, a lot of players are probably got to experience the weather up here this year. Now they just want to come up here in the sun. So we're going to be getting a lot of talk around players wanting to come up, but you just kind of wait till we get a text from the club saying, yeah, we got him. So we'll see what happens.
All right, guys, we better start wrapping things up. Mark, I'm interested from a reporting point of view. How different is this for you today, covering a grand final? Normally, obviously, you're at the G. Is it different just doing it off the TV?
No, of course it'll be different, but footy has been different this year. I think I've watched every game. There's been no overlap, so you've watched a lot of games of football this year, and a lot of players develop. And one thing that the football coverage is, you're so close to the contest. When you're at the ground, you can say sitting at the MCG, you're sitting on the member side wing. You haven't got a TV near you. It's so far across the other side of the ground that you actually miss. You actually miss seeing those just little tap-ons and those little courageous things that players do when you're at the ground. And what I've noticed this year, I normally go Friday night and try and go to one on Saturday, and I write all day, write my tack column on Sunday, so I'm in front of the box on Sundays. But you've been able to pick up so much more on TV. But of course, there is nothing like being at a game to pick up the essence of the crowd and the feeling of the crowd, which we all love going to the football to see. And from a journalistic point of view, the game has demanded that media people be so much more educated about the game. There's all these people sitting at home. We've got to learn the way the new styles of football being played, and trying to explain to people how Brisbane are playing and how Geelong and all the teams. And sometimes you need to be at the ground to see how teams set up behind the ball. Now, people say that's crap, but it's not, because you get a better idea of how Geelong sets up, and all the teams, how they set up, who's doing all the barking behind play, who are the leaders behind play. And I think you can be at the ground. When you're at the ground, you can see that a hell of a lot better, because you can only see what's on the box in front of you. But I hope that's given some insight to covering off TV rather than being at the ground.
And just to finish this up, who are you tipping? I think you had the Cats in the paper. Has that changed given the conditions or anything? And then maybe a first goal and a Norm Smith prediction as well.
Well, Jack Rewell kicks a lot of goals, and I work with Jack, and Jack always says, I'm going to kick the first goal. So I'll say Jack will kick the first goal. Geelong, I think, will win. And the reason I think Geelong will win is I think their defensive and offensive game over the last month has been really, really strong. Okay, so I think when Geelong's best is the best I've seen this year in all components of the game. They strangle teams, and they've been able to increase their scoring this year. So I think that holds them in good stead. And I interviewed Joel Selwood this week and Chris Scott. And Joel's been a warrior for that football club. And when the rains came, I thought Joel will be in there giving everything he's got around the stoppages. Mitch just spoke about that important winning the ball and getting territory. And I think Joel today might win a lot of hard balls for the Cats. So a couple of goals ahead for me for the Cats. Mitch?
And Joel for the Norm Smith, eh?
Yeah, sorry, Joel for the Norm Smith.
Yeah, I'd say first goal, Lambert. He just seems to pop up when you least expect him. So I'd say, yeah, I think he's going to be the first goal scorer. I think Richmond in the wet, they would have watched that Port Adelaide game up there pretty closely and try to figure out how they play in the wet. And I think, I think Richmond are going to just get over the line. For Norm Smith, I'll choose Dangerfield. Actually, I think that he's built for this type of weather and these moments. And he's always wanted to get a premiership. So I think he's going to be running around like a headless chicken, getting that ball and getting it going forward and doing some courageous dives and knock-ons. So I'm going to think he's going to get there.
Who's the better player, Dangerfield or Dusty?
That's what you say. When people say, who would you rather start the team with? I reckon they're very different players, although they do a lot of similar things. But I'd say if a premiership goes to Dangerfield, I think he'd be the better player. But Dusty, his finals campaign, I reckon he's one of the best finals footy players I've seen in my life. So he's very, very handy too.
Well done, Mitch.
Yeah, nice.
Where's that
thanks,
fence?
Guys. That's been awesome. Thanks for that. We'll, Robbo, enjoy the game. Mark and Mitch, will you too? And we'll be back here at halftime for a quick chat to see where we're at. Hopefully it's nice and close. But thanks for that, and we'll talk again soon.
All right, thanks for having me, guys. I'll see you soon.
Mitch.